All Things Money with David Blain, a discussion about your money, including everything from investing and taxes to real estate. Now with this week's program from D.L. Blain & Company in New Bern, here's David Blain.
Hello, I'm David Blain, and welcome to All Things Money. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to have a discussion about some investing, taxes, maybe talk about a little bit of real estate. The show, All Things Money, is about you and your money. So if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you. Our phone number is 252-633-0107. Our email is allthingsmoney@dlblain.com. And you can visit us on the web at www.dlblain.com. That's DLBLAIN.com. There you'll find a little bit more about me and my company, D.L. Blain & Company, a registered investment advisor, as well as if you miss some of our shows, we put all of our archive shows on the website that you can listen to at a later time. Well, we've got a great show planned for you today. We've got several topics. We're going to start off with one. I was thinking over the Labor Day weekend that Labor Day, besides signaling the end of the summer, I was talking to my children about it, and not a lot of people maybe know what Labor Day is about. I think some of the meaning of Labor Day has been lost in the fact that most people have desk jobs. They sit at the desk and look at a computer, and the concept of labor, people kind of think of, well, that's somebody else, hard labor type things. But this was Labor Day, and Labor Day is there to celebrate the sacrifice and efforts of all the workers in America, whether you work with your hands and back or your mind and your eyes sitting at a computer. It's there to celebrate all of the laborers in America. And it also got me thinking a little bit about payroll taxes and things like that. And so I was doing some research, and I came across this great article by Terry Savage, who writes for the Chicago Sun-Times, and the title of this article is, "Your Payroll Taxes Go into a Bottomless Hole." Now, who wouldn't keep reading if they came across an article like that? And it's an excellent article. It goes over some of the history of payroll taxes and some of the things like that. And so I want to hit a few highlights from it. And she starts off with a question about why do you work? And it may seem like a silly question, but there are some fortunate people, maybe Warren Buffett, that works because they just simply love what they do. But most people will say that they work to support themselves and their family. And that's kind of what, as we think about Labor Day weekend, that's kind of what comes to mind is, people out there working to support themselves and their family. And as the unemployment rate has climbed up to about 9.6%, people become more thankful for the jobs that they do have, and they think a lot about, being fortunate to have the job. But the reality comes down to people work for that paycheck. And the paycheck is the most important thing. If you stop paying people, more than likely they will not continue to show up to work. And so what I want to do is take a real close look at that bottom line, that paycheck that people come to work every day for, and see that for most workers, the largest deduction is this thing called FICA, F-I-C-A. Most people realize that there's a big difference between their gross pay and their net pay. And of course, the gross pay is what they're paid, $50,000 a year, $40,000 a year. The net pay is actually what gets put in their checking account. And FICA, which, by the way, stands for Federal Insurance Contributions Act. That's funny, as Terry points out. Contributions is really normally associated with something voluntary. But in this case, of course, it's not voluntary whatsoever. That the FICA tax is a payroll tax. And it's composed of a tax on Social Security, which is the old age survivors and disability, as well as Medicare. And it currently consumes 15.3% of your pay. Now, half is taken out of your paycheck, and the employer pays the other half. But as I always tell people, if you think that that other half is coming out of the employer's pocket and not your own, you're living on a different planet. That if the employer has to pay 7.65%, you can guarantee that your salary has been reduced by somewhere around 7.65%. And so I don't think there's any way around it that one way or another you are paying it all. Even if they don't pass it on to their own workers, they certainly pass it on in the form of higher prices to the consumer who buys this stuff. So one way or the other, the laborer out there is paying 15.3%. The FICA tax was started in 1937 when Social Security was enacted. And it's interesting to see there's both a rate, the 15.3% rate, as well as what we call a wage base, which is around $107,000 a year. What that means is the tax only applies to the first $107,000. Now, I don't want to get this too complicated, but that is the Social Security wage base. The Medicare wage base, which the Medicare tax was enacted later on, that has an unlimited amount. So you pay Medicare tax on an unlimited amount of salary and Social Security tax on about the first $107,000. Well, what I'm getting at is when it was first started in 1937 all the way to 1949, the rate was 2%, and it was only on the first $3,000 of income. And it went up to 3% in 1950. It went on up to, in 1963 to 65, it went up to 7.25%. That was a large jump. And in 1972, it raised to 10.4% on the first $9,000. In 1966, the first Medicare tax was added, a relatively small 0.35%. Of course, it's much larger today. But even these figures, going back to 72 at 10.4%, seems very low compared to today's 15.3%. When it was raised in 1990 to what it is today, 15.3%, on a wage base of $51,300. And so the value has more than doubled. It's gone up 5 times since that lowly, or 7 times since that lowly 2%, almost 8 times, 2% since that lowly amount started in 1937 when it started. When we come back from the break, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about where all this money has gone that people have been putting into the Social Security Trust Fund. But I just want to start off with a little history of that here as we celebrate Labor Day last weekend. For All Things Money, I'm David Blain, and we'll be right back after a few messages from our sponsors.